very first thing that we have to get in our grasp is a standard. That standard cannot be, he thinks this, she thinks that, they believe this, they believe that. We have to go by the Holy Scriptures. If you do not establish the standard of the Scriptures when you talk to people, the conversations are not going to get anywhere. So I believe that Holy Scripture is the sole authority on matters of faith and practice. What that means is, when it comes to what we need to know for salvation, for how to live our lives, for how to interact in a righteous and set-apart manner in the earth that we live, the way that we find out how to do those things is by reading the Bible. And I do believe that the Bible should be interpreted previous revelation first, latter revelation second. What I mean by that, in a nutshell, is we interpret revelation that comes later by revelation that came previous. We do not interpret it in a contradictory manner. We learn this in a passage like Acts chapter 17, 10 through 11, where there are some people that are mentioned called Bereans because they lived in Berea, and it is said that they're more noble than those that lived in Thessalonica because they examined the Scriptures daily to see if the things that Paul taught them were accurate or were true. And they also received the word with great readiness or eagerness of mind, like they were on the edge of their seat waiting to hear what Paul was going to say next. So when that was stated by Luke, which was the author of the book of Acts, there was no New Testament written at that time. So what the Bereans were doing is they were listening to Paul teach them, and then they were examining the Scriptures that they had available to them, primarily what we would call the Old Testament or the Tanakh, the Hebrew Scriptures, and they would base whether or not Paul spoke truth on what the Hebrew Scriptures said. So we start with the Old Testament, that's the foundation, and then we linger over into the New Testament, which is authoritative, but is never to be interpreted in a way that contradicts the revelation that Yahweh, the Almighty, previously has given. So Scripture has to be our standard. We do not want to veer away from the path. There's a great book that I would encourage everybody to get and to read and to study, and that is a book by Dr. Neil Lightfoot titled simply How We Got the Bible. How We Got the Bible. It is an excellent resource book to understand why our standard should be Holy Scripture, that our standard should be only Holy Scripture, and that Scripture is authoritative, it is complete, and it is sufficient to share with us what we need to know in these essential matters. That's not to say that you can't learn from other books that the Scriptures might speak about, like the book of Jasher or the apocryphal books in the intertestamental period, or historical books like the works of Josephus or the works of Philo. You can learn from all of those things and many more. But when it comes to the authoritative or the standard that we go by, it's found in Holy Scripture, Old Testament foundation, New Testament the building block upon which goes over top of the foundation.